What's up, Scarred Ones? It's Johnny.
And Amy.
And we're here for week 2
What?
of our weekly Q&A. Thanks for joining us. The YouTube channel subscribership has grown since we released the first one, so that's good, seeing as this channel's been around for like 10 fucking years and no one ever subscribed to it. So today we're going to be taking 10 questions. If you're not familiar with our Q&A format, we release a post. Lately it's been pretty late, like yesterday. Sorry. We're still in the middle of production of season 4. But you actually get to go on that post, ask questions. They can be to do with the lore and story. They can be with producing a podcast. How does it affect our personal lives? Who's all involved in it? Any question from the gambit of podcast related. Hell, if you want to know what our favorite type of french fries are, it doesn't matter. Ask it on there and we will answer the question in the Q&A. If we don't get to your question this week, stay tuned. It'll probably be in the Q&A the following week. We try to do 5 questions from Patreon supporters. So those patrons get first access to the questions. I think we have 2 this week. But if you want to join our Patreon at the $1 tier level, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You get access to not just your questions first in a weekly Q&A video, but you get access to our secret Facebook group, which has a daily vlog that I put in it, which is kind of funny at some times and kind of interesting. What the hell at other times. But also it's a really cool, close-knit community separate from the Scarred Ones group. Now in the Scarred Ones group, you can still ask questions. That's our public Sirenicide group, and the post is put in there, I think on the Sirenicide page, Twitter, and a few other places. If you ask a question, we'll probably find it until this gets so out of hand when there's millions and millions of questions, and then
we'll take it when
that'd be a
comes.
Great problem to have. All right, so without that, let's just dive into the questions.
All right. So our first question comes from one of our patrons, Waylon McKenzie.
Happy birthday to you.
It is his birthday today.
That's crazy. I gotta make sure this gets edited and released today.
And his question is, how many people have been involved with the podcast to date, and how do you pick them?
Oh, shit.
I don't think we can count,
there's
everybody.
been a lot. I would say it's got to be over 100 at this point.
I think so.
Over 100 people have been involved with the show, between producers, voice actors, musicians, writers. I'd say at least a little over 100 is a safe bet, including the core team, of course. How do we pick them? Well, in the beginning, it was just, hey, do you want to be on our show? We need people to talk.
It won't take that long. Just come on over.
Just come on over. I'm not that great of an actor. It doesn't matter. Neither are we. And then as we start taking it more serious and realize that, oh shit, people are listening to this. Going into season 2, I started opening up the world of casting, and making sure that the cast fits the part. I'd go through an audition, sometimes voice reels from voice actors all around the globe. Sometimes I'd set a blip from a character out into voice acting groups and then have people send me a MP3 or WAV file of them trying that out just on their cell phone. Not for quality purposes, but just to get an idea of, is this who I want for this character? So that's usually, a lot of times I'll be talking to somebody like that I know. I'm like, oh man, hey man, have you ever thought about voice acting? Because and it's not the acting part, it's just the voice is so unique, or something that I could just see them saying, this character I'm designing. And now they come in here and they sit in front of the microphone and they have their headphones on, and I can coach them through the lines, like to get them up to snuff. Now that being said, usually third or fourth time somebody comes in from that, it's very like they've got it by that point. Yeah. That's sometimes like, was it Amber Blake? I was like, damn, girl, you've been practicing. That was amazing.
I know. Like, she came in here and she's just awesome.
Nailed it.
Also, another patron, Sarah Bushyhead. How does the team balance a busy everyday lives with a podcast schedule? Do you all meet for one day for an episode, or is it spread out over time?
Oh, I think if we met every day for an episode, not every day of the week, but every time we needed an episode, we'd kill each other.
I think so.
I mean, there's 16 episodes in the last 2 seasons, season 3 and season 4. Imagine meeting 16 times a year just for the episodes. how well that would go over.
That would be really hard because
There wouldn't be a podcast.
No,
It's
probably not.
I guess to answer that part of the question, we'll kind of go into that and then go into the day-to-day. We typically split up we do writers' rooms, about 4 of those per season, usually one for about every 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
We would do a preliminary writers' room for the whole season, and then we'd meet again and kind of map out the first 8 in detail, and then roughly talk about the last 8. And then once those first 8 were being written during that time, we'd meet again and finish out in detail the final 8. And then typically we'd meet one more time, especially if there was going to be mini episodes following a season, talk a little bit about the season we wrote, and then go head first into the mini episodes. So I think this season we only met 3 times because there's no mini episodes following season 4.
Not this time.
Unless we get to 96 patrons, and then there'll be a lot following season 4.
Yeah.
Boo. Anyway, so, yeah. The first part, I don't know, how would you take that one?
I think there's a lot of balancing. Like, I don't think we would survive without our calendar. And alerts constantly, like, I'm like, okay, the kids have this going on. What do we have scheduled for the podcast? Throw it in our messenger that we're all together, like, hey, can't do this night. Kids have gymnastics or whatever we have going on, school event, etc. Or we have to stay late for work and do an event at work. Like, all that stuff has to be on the calendar because we have
to realize the answer to this question is probably we don't.
It's like one day at
How
a time.
do we balance it with everyday life? I don't think we do. We don't sleep much.
No.
We used to sleep a lot more. We used to see a lot more movies. We used to watch a lot more TV shows. I used to actually play video games.
What's a video game?
Right. And I don't do any of that anymore. This has absorbed all of that. So, but in a good way.
And usually our free time we do spend doing something with the kids. That kind of thing. Our kids are very much used to the
My
podcast.
calendar just went off.
Yeah. Our kids are very used to the podcast life. In fact, you'll hear their voices in it. They understand. Our son's more involved in it now that he's a little bit older. So,
I mean, it's cool, like, when his friends and stuff like that come over, like, what is this in y'all's house?
yeah.
Because, like, our den area, our media room would have been, or whatever, is our studio. So, and it's between our garage and our kitchen. So, like, there's this breezeway, I guess it was a den at one time in this house. And when you walk through it now, it's like, what is all, what, you got keyboards and, like, all this equipment? It's like, hey, yeah, we produce a show here.
And then the Ashworths are on the other side of that, too. So we have to make sure that calendar's being used because they have kids as well that do extra things in their work schedules. And
then it's not even even without kids, like Joe, his schedule, I mean, he works full-time job. Him and his go do things like normal young couples would do. So you gotta move a lot of that out of the way. Like I remember, was it this past week? It's like, man, it's first week of football. We really got to meet for this. It's like, well, yeah, sorry. But it was the what's out on the podcast feed right now, the 3-year anniversary
that we recorded.
That's live on the feed. All right, let's go to the next one.
This question is from Mr. Kevin Crow. What was the underlying motivation to create Sirenicide? Have you considered branching out into other genres like noir type of short stories, maybe creating or recreating classic horror radio dramas like War of the Worlds?
Huh. That's a good one. All right. So, first off, the underlying motivation was just to promote a band. So we've told that story a bunch of times, but just to reiterate, that was literally the motivation to create the Sirenicide podcast, was just for promotion for the musical project. Have I considered branching out into other genres? No. Just because Sirenicide itself, even though it is a horror story, we've done like mysteries, we've done like emotional distress episodes that have supernatural elements, but are still more about the character, like their drama. I tell people all the time that it says that we tell people that we were a serialized audio drama, horror drama. And I was like, drama is all those words for a reason, or all those phrases for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it is way more of a drama than it is anything scary. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a character-driven story, not just scares and spooky shit. I would never ever ruin something like War of the Worlds or anything classic like audio radio dramas. I've been listening to a lot more lately, like at work, away from normal podcast and things like that, like going and finding like YouTube videos of the old actual 40s broadcasts. I was listening to some Buck Rogers not too long ago. I know it's not scary, but and it's just so amazing. And there's no way that's like capturing lightning in a bottle. It's not. It would just be like, that's not as good, and it wouldn't be. So, answer it, no. I don't think we'll be doing that. But
And our world that we've already created is so large, and there's so many things that you can go through and just plug in that I think could hit all of those genres to begin with within our universe that we've created.
I just realized as we do each one of these questions, we're going to get increasingly hotter because there's like a light in here.
I know.
There's no oxygen in this box.
I'm already like...
It's like, so each week when we do this, by the time we get to question 10, it's going to be like, and thank you guys for coming. And we're going to have sweat marks on our shirt. All right, so our next question comes from Dan Lefebvre. What movies, if any, did you draw inspiration from for elements of our story? A lot. Movie-wise, Dan does movie analysis, so this is a good question.
Yeah. I just put that together.
The main movie that have inspired the show are Star Wars. There are literally Star Wars lines everywhere in this show. All too easy. Like little just homages to my favorite story ever written. Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. I love the narrative style of that. Not just the book, but the way it was adapted to the screen. I mean, a lot of it's got to do with like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and their inflections when they talk. So I kind of sometimes picture sometimes like that kind of romantic whenever like two characters are being compassionate and stuff. That kind of hits in my head a lot. It's a good question. Our next question comes from Brandon Greer. He asked, if I was to make Sirenicide into a TV show, what is our ideal network and where would we, and production for the show? And I guess he uses an example. We always thought about like an animated show on Adult Swim, which is really cool because I was a big fan of Metalocalypse.
Yeah.
The animation style. They are a huge inspiration for the way the Dark Elite. If you ever see where Vima goes into the chamber and she says, I see the elders up there, and now we wait. And, like, there's all these screens and everything from all around the world. That was a very big inspiration for them. But if I was going to do animation, I don't know the animator right off the top of my head, but it would be a cross between whoever's animating the Castlevania on Netflix and whoever animated Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. That is literally my favorite style of animation. Very closely followed, of course, by the Dark Knight, the animated series from Batman, the 92 series. But that would look weird with what we're doing. But the Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust stuff would nail it right on. I mean, that has inspired so much of what I do anyway. So I could naturally see Doc and Johnny and these characters in that animation style, like longer, slender talking and just set in a more American setting. If you haven't seen Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, it is a work of art.
Okay, and now our next question comes from Alberto de Jesus. If you could turn Sirenicide into a video game, what kind of video game would you like it to be? Meaning gameplay, game style. You have unlimited budget for it. What kind of monster would we get?
Unlimited budget? It would be The Witcher. It would be a modern Witcher, which I up until recently I thought was what Cyberpunk was going to be, this new game that CD Projekt Red is making. But now I hear that it's only going to be first-person point of view, which I'm not a fan of. I'm still going to buy it, but I thought that like Witcher's third person, so you see your character. That would be that where there's cars, motorcycles, like taking Witcher and like Grand Theft Auto's world and merging them, because you got the supernatural character heavy driven plot elements with a complete sandbox that has modern equipment like cars and modern buildings and all that set in Morston. So instead of San Andreas, you have Morston. And as you drive out of Morston, you get to the more rural areas, like see Yellow Eyes as area and all that. That would be that, yeah, totally.
I think it'd be really cool to see Doogie.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
like your character is going through the woods. It's like, oh, I outran that vampire. And you just like, oh shit, no. Unlimited budget.
I would watch the gameplay, but
If I had a budget constraint, it'd be a Telltale game kind of format. I know Telltale's not a company, or they've just been bought out or whatever, but they were not the same company. But it'd be one of those, you ask questions and very limited gameplay and narrates where you go next. That would be a lot easier to make.
those are cool though.
Yeah, no, I enjoy them. Good question. It's the Matt Hughes Minute. It's the Matt Hughes Minute.
Matt Hughes Minute.
All right, so got some questions from Matt Hughes.
He just has a couple.
Do you go through each episode and just experiment with the vibe of each scene, create the sounds based off what each scene calls for? Basically, do you have a library of ambient music, or is it something you have to create uniquely for each episode? And the answer is both.
Yep.
Some scenes get scored. Every scene, unless it's they're literally in the same room talking about the same subject, which happens in season 4 a few times. Like we introduce a said character in this one room, and that character interacts with this other one that we know a little better, and they have a few scenes throughout the season. And I tried to make sure that the music was the same in each one of those scenes, except for we evolve it a little bit as the season goes, just because I like nuance. But other than that, usually when I'm writing the script, I do, we have these Command F prompts is what we call them. Like we can Command F search a document, and they're MQ asterisk. And that tells the person that's writing the music for it, which is usually me or Reiner.
Or Joe.
And Hannah Filibervis this season has been writing with us. So, and they can command search that, and it'll say Act 1, Scene 3, dark, light piano. Like I want a piano flare and then a bassy synth. And then from there, they can read the scene and just let their imagination take over. Now, that doesn't have to score the scene. They haven't actually heard the scene. That's just reading it and creating something that's going to be a good 2 to 3 minutes, but loops seamlessly. And then there's certain scenes that it says must score, and that's it. It doesn't give any, like, if he throws down and slams something, I need to, dun-dun, do-de-do-de, and that kind of thing. I have to actually, the episode has to be built, except for the music. Continuing with the Matt Hughes Minute.
I know you've talked about producing your own sound effects. What are some of the different ways you've captured sound effects for the show?
There's a lot of weird shit. We talked about the rotisserie chicken one, but if you've never heard that story, in season 1, we didn't know how to get surgical effects. So I opened up my refrigerator, and there was like a Kroger chicken from like the night or 2 nights before, because like where all the fat and grease had like started turning white and all that kind of shit around it from being cold. I brought that in here, put it right in front of the mic, and just went, and then broke the bones a little bit, and we've used that for a lot. That's still in our library. That one, and then some of the stereotypical ones, peeling an orange, cracking celery, those kind of things.
You've come in here and ran with a backpack full of pots and pans.
Oh yeah, for All Is Quiet On.
Yes.
When the girl's running with her backpack. And that's hard because I'm fat and I breathe heavy. Plus I've had stents in my lungs from my surgery, so I wheeze like an old man even though I'm in my 30s. So I have to be like, all right, you ready? All right, hit record. So I have to hold my breath when I create sound effects. And now I know whenever we like look at public domain sound effects that we can use and things like that, if I hear somebody wheezing or breathing, I don't even, I'm like, man, they didn't even take the time to hold their breath.
We've done a lot of different things. We have a video of us doing the equinox.
And we have a video of me cutting donuts in that abandoned mall parking lot to get the Camaro turning around.
Yeah.
And me throwing a tire into...
Oh, I forgot about all of that.
Yeah, where Droven gets thrown across the...
Yes, we stacked up a whole bunch of random stuff in our garage.
What happens to Droven? We don't know. We didn't say spoilers yet, so...
When did y'all decide to start doing those little bottleneck side stories? Yellow Eyes is one of my favorites. I love how it can stand alone, but is still very much part of the Sirenicide world that you've created. Also, a little biased, but Shutter Love is another favorite.
Why is that? Why is Shutter Love your favorite, Matt Hughes?
One of them.
Matt Hughes was in Shutter Love. He did an amazing,
He did really
really,
good.
really good job. Just going from normal to, no, man, I don't want to do that, to, leave me alone! Like, he really hit the gambit there on that. That was really cool. So he's been on our hot box here. So
Yes, he has.
the first one was the second episode ever. Technically, we have what we call standalone episodes, like Yellow Eyes. And even though Matthew Finnis, sorry, Matt Hughes, even though Matt Finnis is in Yellow Eyes and he's in The Suffering Loop, which is season 1, episode 2, they don't contain any more for his personal quest or the overarching story. They can stand completely alone. Like, you can hit play on that episode, and by the time the credit rolls, you got it. Now, we might hint to some of that later and use that to grow our story, but it doesn't affect that story itself. Shutter Love being a really good example because nobody's in Shutter Love.
Yeah.
The Rotandans are mentioned in it, but, that's it.
So we kind of took that model from the X-Files and things like that, like where they would have these random side quests or side storylines that just kind of contains itself and it ends there. But then you still have, our series, the overarching story that goes on. This just gives you a wider range of what the universe is about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, X-Files was a huge inspiration. We asked movies earlier what movies inspired us, but X-Files and, Law and Order and that style. I mean, I don't really watch a lot of Law and Order. You did.
I did.
And I watched a lot of X-Files, so it was very, bringing that kind of thing together, here's what happened. Now the rest of the episode unfolds, telling you after the theme song, how we got there. All right, so this is spoilers.
This comes from Duncan McPherson.
Sir Duncan, Lord Sterling.
Woo! There seems to be more than meets the eye to the lore of Sirenicide regarding the parallel realms and structure of the universe, as we saw in Scaries on the Wall. Are there any tidbits of information regarding the realms that can be shared with listeners?
Yeah, there are 5 realms in my world. I think we've pretty much broken that down. There's Scary, which is the dead realm. That's why I want to mark the spoilers in case somebody doesn't want to know any of this. There's Heaven, Malik's an angel, Sir Duncan. Hell, where the Rotandans come from, the red suits, the devils. We were in the dream realm. That's where we had a whole major story in there. That was a standalone bottlenecked story. That's Nightmares, right? Yes, Nightmares. And that's in season 3. That was a really good standalone story. So, and then Earth, our universe, the infinite realm or the Midland, depending on where you're at in the storyline. So you got Heaven, Hell, and the Midland, the realm midway between both of those solid points, and those are physical realms. And then you have Scary and the Dream, which are ethereal. They manifest, that kind of thing, from the augment, which binds them all together. And it's
not complicated at all.
Not complicated at all. That's all the time we have today for questions. If you want to get your question to get on the show, you can just leave a comment at the bottom of this video on YouTube. Go to our Facebook, Twitter, any of our Facebook groups, throw a question in there. If anything, just subscribe to this channel, share out there to your friends and family, and go check out our show. Season 4 is literally right around the corner.
Yes, it is.
We are about to launch it, and it's exciting. We're really fucking excited. I'm so excited. Right now, if you go to our feed, we have the 3-year, we brought up earlier, we have the 3-year podcast. We've been a podcast for 3 years. Today, officially. Thursday, September 8th, 2016. Waylon's birthday. What a gift.
Waylon.
I don't even think did he know us then yet? I don't know. He was working with us, I think. But he didn't know we released a whole show for him.
Yeah,
on his
just
birthday.
for him.
Just for you, buddy. But
we didn't have it in the works long before that.
If you go listen to that, it's a Google Hangout session. The quality is a little lower than we normally do, but it's still fun. And at the end of it, the quality gets really high because we have an over 3-minute segment of season 4, and it's from episode 2. So it doesn't spoil any of the main story. It just gives you a really good taste of what we're doing because It Chapter 2 just came out, and so it's perfect timing because that episode is the whole cast is kids.
Yep.
Every one of them except for somebody at the end, which won't spoil.
Mm-hmm.
But the main cast is all kids, like 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, from 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Were there? Oh no.
No, Emily's 15.
Yes.
So, yeah, pretty cool. Check it out. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you next week. Bye. All elements of Sirenicide are copyright 2019 by Atrium Dynamics.